This episode of The Libby O Show is brought to you by Blackbox, your go-to space for tour rehearsals, photo shoots, and more. Our Blackbox is your blank slate. Visit ips.live to book now.
Hey, we're the Shadowboxers, and you're watching The Libby O Show.
How did she do it? Do it.
Libby. Oh, oh. Libby. Oh, oh. Libby.
3,
Oh, oh.
2,
Libby.
1.
It's the Libby O Show.
Hello.
Hey.
How's it going?
Hey.
Good to see you guys.
You too.
It's been a few years.
I think we did this interview around the same exact time that we're doing this interview. It was the same time of year.
We were actually thinking about it also. I think it was like May of 2017. Yeah.
Yes.
It was right before you went on tour, I think.
We were about to go into the studio, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Anyway, how have you been?
I've been good. You know, last week, of course, like everybody else, it was super heavy to walk myself through and process. So needless to say, it wasn't the most productive week, but it gave me a lot of time just to think and, walk myself through that, with the rest of the world. But for the most part, just working on this show and trying to stay creative and positive and, for what it is. So what about you guys?
Pretty much the same. I mean, it's been a weird couple of months to say the least. And to put an album out in the middle of this was what it was,
Yeah.
And I think all three of us have, in the past 2 weeks too, we've really sort of looked at ourselves and our own privilege, and we're trying to listen and learn as much as we can, and that's the most important thing we can be doing right now. And we're really proud of the album we put out, of course, but there will be a time for that, and this is the time for real social change, and we hope we can come back to this album when real change has actually been implemented.
Well, that's great. And I mean, you should be proud of the album. I've enjoyed listening to it and, dissecting each of the songs and just hearing how you've all evolved over the past, couple years since we last spoke. So the debut album is called The Slow March of Time Flies By. And you talk a lot about nostalgia in this album and in the descriptions of the songs. So can you explain how nostalgia has helped you in your creative process, as well as this time that we're all going through?
I'd say nostalgia for us, one of the things that we realized when we were making this album and the message started to take shape, because you start with writing the songs, and then after a while you look at the scatter plot and you realize that they all kind of have this similar theme to them. We realized that we've gone through a lot of these changes in our career in relative anonymity, which makes it a lot more everyman, a lot more sort of understandable and relatable. We're not some big celebrities who do some back to basics album. This is kind of how everybody feels about looking, we all turned 30.
We haven't been changed by money.
I love that. That's so great to hear.
Changed by money or fame. We crossed over on the 30 line.
Yeah.
We've been writing and we've been performing so many shows over the past decade, on tour all over the world, sometimes playing for tens of thousands, sometimes playing for 10. And it feels like it's always been moving forward, and we've always just tried to be sponges and absorb information from the people that we're in the rooms with.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the time where we felt like we needed to say what we've learned over all of these years. And the nostalgia piece kicked in when we realized that a lot of what we were doing after all of that we've learned was similar to the things that we first connected over when we were 20, when we were 18, actually. And so that sort of full circle, that full circleness made us feel this nostalgia of really remembering what it felt like to put our voices together for the first time, and how fun that is, and how many things have gotten in the way at times. You know, you think about money and fame changing people. Also, the lack of money and fame can change people.
Which I think a lot of people are experiencing that more so now.
Yeah.
So,
you know, you when you have money and fame, you can at least point to things that clearly have worked historically. There's been a lot of trial and error, so a lot of it is on us to decide what we think works. So when there's a lot of subjectivity and opinion involved, it can be harder.
and kind of
So yeah, that's what we've been doing.
I love it. And what would you say is like the one thing that comes to your mind first that is a theme on this album that has always been between you three in terms of your voice and your creativity? Like the one thing that stayed the same the whole way through, despite opinions, despite...
Well, harmony.
Yeah.
It seems obvious, but it's also true.
It seems obvious, which is why sometimes it's the sort of hiding in plain sight thing, where we know that when we put our voices together, we create something that's unique and uniquely ours, and also sort of reminiscent of a lot of the things that we love in music past that isn't there today. So we see our place there, and I think the whole key to this was just focusing on songwriting that highlighted that, and focusing on production, which is Adam's job, in highlighting that. And everything surrounding it needs to complement that and not sort of get in the way of it.
And so what I've noticed through this album, just reading a lot of different reviews about it, you're basically walking your listeners through those different decades of music that you love so much. And so can you first speak to the order that you have these songs in that tells a story that you want the listeners to hear?
Sure.
Matt, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, we had the sequence went through about 70 different changes. Yeah.
That's very indicative of our band, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a singles-driven world, and yet we're fighting bloody fights about back order because it matters to us.
Because track 7 matters.
Yeah, it's always my favorite.
But I think the sequence on the record was less about chronology and more about the feelings and the flow of energy that we wanted to provide the listener. We love examining and thinking about why artists make choices for track listing on records, and it was really fun exploring that together, the three of us, for the first time in a very long time. And so the order that we decided upon was just sort of like in the same way that we would come up with a great, or attempt to come up with a great set list. We just wanted to come up with a good listening experience that was dynamic and flowed throughout the whole 43 minutes. There were a couple songs that we knew, we were all very confident that we wanted Won't Ever Say Goodbye to close out the record. And then pretty much everything else was up in the air for a long time.
Well, Float On By is one of my favorites because I like songs in the beginning. I think it's going to be one way, and it completely surprises me a couple seconds in. So talk about the production of that and just your thought process of including that song.
Well, this is 100% Adam, this one.
Scott, what do you think?
It's all production, so...
Yeah, well, so
He wrote it too.
that song, I don't know. I've been very obviously influenced on that song by, like Talking Heads and LCD Sound System and bands that have songs that just start on 10 and end on 10. And I love a song that can do that and not bore you, which is really hard to do. And I think it was accomplished with that song, but that was pretty much me experimenting with if I could do that or not. Lyrically, that song was the result of a long sort of list I had written in journals over like 2 years of just thoughts. It's like a random collection of thoughts that I thought, when you're writing a lot, sometimes you'll turn a phrase that you think, oh, okay, that actually stands alone by itself as a good phrase. I don't know if it works for this poem I'm writing or for this song I'm writing, but this phrase works. And I had sort of highlighted a bunch of these. You could almost throw them in a hat and put them in any order in that song, and it still makes sense. And I looked and I sort of like laid them all out. There was like 30 others that didn't make the song. And like, what do all these mean as a collection? And that's where the chorus came from. That was just the result of like 3 or 4 really late weed-fueled evenings.
Well, it's great. I love it. So,
Thanks.
Yeah. Is Prince an influence on this album?
Always.
Always? Okay, yeah. I've heard a little bit throughout, and then I remember you all sang a Prince cover. I think it was an Exit In show. I don't know how I remember that.
So we did Purple Rain.
Yeah, well, Prince died the day before.
Really?
Something ridiculous. Like we had this show planned, and I remember us realizing, I remember us calling an audible, like, wow, we need to do something to honor that. And so we tweaked the set list last minute. I don't remember how soon after the show was, but I know it was pretty soon.
What are some other influences of the album, would you say? Musical influences of the past.
Sinatra.
I'd say the Bee Gees are a huge influence.
Okay.
The way that they're able to make pop music or in their time, they were able to make contemporary pop music with harmony-driven melody and chorus. That was kind of like, if we were to have had an inspiration board musically, that would have been up at the top of the list.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of modern influences, especially from the production side, like Tame Impala is a big influence, especially for Adam, who's producing most of the time.
Yeah.
Frank Ocean's a big influence. But a lot of
Bon Iver too.
Bon Iver, right. But a lot of the songcraft is like Honeymoon, for example. I Can't Stop Thinking About You. Some of these songs are a lot more traditional songwriting craft, but which we wanted these songs to be. If we were to play them acoustic, we wanted them to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. And then the production, making that modern was a real trick that we took a long time to figure out.
And speaking of the writing that you just mentioned, can we talk about Highway Roses, where that hook came from? Because it's brilliant. So who came up with that phrase alone?
Love it. I came up with that chorus. I came up with that title. I have like a list of, I feel like this is a very country songwriter thing for me to do, but like more than song lyrics, I have like a title list.
Mm-hmm.
And so we actually Adam and I co-wrote that in Nashville with Jamie Liddell, who also co-produced. And while we were sort of figuring out the instrumental that we wanted, I sat down at the piano and the melody came to me, and I knew that I wanted to use this title for a really long time, and I was trying to figure out a way to use it in a way that wasn't like a country ballad. because to me, like Highway Roses sounded like an Eagles song. And so I was trying to figure out a way to sort of apply that feeling and emotion into a very sort of funky, driving, almost like deserty song. And that was the chorus, and the lyrics that we came up with for the chorus was basically the best solution to that.
Yeah, I remember that day we were with Jamie, and he was working on. It was like just one of the best days ever. You know, it's like some days you're in the studio and it's a fight against yourself. That day was just pure sort of like green light, and everything was working. But I remember Matt was singing the title Highway Roses at the end of the phrase. He had the whole melody. We just like stood there for 3 minutes next to the couch, and we're like, what? Threw out lyrics for the chorus, and it was done.
Yeah.
So it was very natural. Nothing felt forced. It was easy.
So that song was written in December of 2019. It was the last song that
make it on the record.
That made it on the record.
Actually, I think it was January.
No, because we were in Nashville.
Oh, for the honeymoon. Yeah.
So I wasn't in that session, right? So these guys sent me the demo that they had made that day. I remember listening to it, and I said, this song is good. This title is great. And it made not that the melodies were bad or whatever, but
Right.
lyrically, the title, like you said, you were drawn to that title. So was I. I was like, I remember telling you, I was like, this is one of the best titles that I think we've ever come up with. And I want to make sure that we mine all of the gold out of it lyrically, because otherwise it would do a disservice to that title. Otherwise, I'd rather use it for another song. And so once I voiced those thoughts, and Adam, I think, went back to work on rewriting the verses, and I chipped in a little bit with some help, and then I think we set that title up so it really pays off when it hits in the chorus.
For sure. And I feel like the storyline is obviously something that happens all the time, and that's also why I was drawn to it. Because you could probably paint that title in so many different ways, but the one that you chose to pair with it was really great. So
We wanted it to be about sort of the way that a relationship can sort of end up feeling. And we felt like the best symbol for Highway Roses was to be the sort of representation of like that false sense of making an effort.
And on top of that, it's such it provides, or it sort of summons so many images like that. It's a very visual title. I think that's rare sometimes where you hear a title and you can already imagine the world that it lives in. Mm-hmm. And so that was another challenge lyrically, is to try and write lyrics that not only conveyed that message and mind out what it really the story is, but also using references and images that are summery highway driving. So we were like, regionally, where does this song live?
Yeah.
And it was like the Southern California, like Southwest feeling deserty song. So it's like, it's never happened to us actually this way, where the title sort of painted the picture and then we just had to take the paint and trace over it.
that's awesome. And so are there any other songs on the album that came together as easily as Highway Roses, or do you feel like it was all kind of sporadic?
Can't stop thinking about you. Can you?
Yeah. I Can't Stop Thinking About You came really easily. And that's rare for us. We liked, Adam once said, and I think it was at the end of an argument or in the middle of an argument that we were having, but he was like, it's tough with this band sometimes because any idea I have, I gotta get it past two goalies that are good. And we all feel that way. It's just the process that we work. And so it doesn't we're very democratic about it. And so it's hard sometimes to just have an idea to our discredit, I think, a lot of times, like admittedly. I think that it's hard a lot of times to just get the inspiration for a great idea, get it out, and just let it live without being sort of judged. We're all guilty of that in various ways. But that was a song that these guys allowed me to get this idea out that just sort of came from hearing this drum loop that Adam had worked up, and I just sprung up and just vomited this thing out, and we let it live for a second, and it really didn't change too much from the initial night that it was born.
So for a trio out there that's like just getting started, who, you know, is trying to find their voice and find, you know, how their creativity is processed between all three of them, what would you say, as those that have been in the game for a while, is the most important thing to kind of get through those, you know, those tough spots of figuring out what songs to keep?
I would recommend that they just each go solo.
Yeah, great question.
That is a good question.
Get a good businessman.
Yeah. Yeah, hire a negotiator.
I think recognize and exploit your strengths.
Yeah.
It's really what it is. And you have to get to a place where you can trust each other to act as if you were your own artists. You know, you want to provide your partners the freedom to feel like they can try things maybe outside of their realm of expertise. But at the end of the day, it's really nice to have a team where you can say, I know you're really good at this, and I know you're really good at this.
Yeah, exactly. We did a lot of work on this album internally, about defining our roles, and then once we define them, not letting them define us. So you need to know what your job is, and then you need to get enough reps in to know what your role is in the system, and then you have to be able to break those rules. But there need to be rules initially, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Like, this is probably not true of every trio, but in a lot of ways, the three of us each have the exact same job, which is to write good songs. You know, I would say some trios maybe have one writer. That would make things easier.
Yeah.
But in our case, you know, that's sort of the baseline job, and we all share it relatively equally. So I totally agree. It's about just lifting up the strengths. If and even if it's within a song, if someone else is better at lyric writing and someone else is better at melody writing, like, use that to your advantage. Don't try to just muscle your way through something. You're on a team, so you got to use the team.
Yes, team is a very important word.
Yeah.
What do you think is most rewarding part about releasing this album at the time that you did, based on just kind of letting yourself grow as a band over the past 10 years?
So Adam mentioned at the beginning, this is a big culmination of a lot of things for us, this album. It's very representative of our journey, and we had to really work out a lot of things that we'd swept under the rug for a lot of years. We got into the room ourselves. We didn't have another producer. We had occasionally some people co-produce on some of the songs, but essentially it was us in a room with Carlos, our bass player, and we had to work this thing out ourselves. So a lot of times with something like art, something subjective, you can base the merit, you can judge its merit based on its successes. And for us, we knew going in to releasing this that whatever happens, we succeeded. You know, we identified our sound. We did the thing that we've always wanted to do, which is put out music into the world that we don't have to explain. We don't have to say that you should also listen to this because it's representative. It's like, no, this is a body of work that we really believe you can listen to and understand who we are. That's always been our challenge, I think, partly because it's a three-headed monster. And there are other reasons, of course. Every artist feels that way, but we kind of maybe feel it times three. And so the coronavirus hit and made it so that we couldn't tour this album, which which is a huge challenge. We obviously want to be otherwise we would have been on the road right now playing this album. And then there are, as we mentioned, the George Floyd incident and the protests and the call for justice.
Right.
Just put the focus of the nation and the world elsewhere. And I think what it's done for us is reinforce that point that it's not, we don't do this because we want everyone to be cheering our name. We do this because we really needed to do this for us. We needed to make this art, and we're really proud of it. And so a lot of ways, it like I'm saying, it reinforces the point that we've already succeeded because we created this, and we know it internally, and it maybe even in a way feels a lot better that way. And we trust the work so much that we know that when the dust settles, so to speak, and people's attention span they're able to focus back on the album, it's going to be there. And doesn't matter if it's next week or next year, we'll feel equally good about it then as we do now. And the people in our community already, it almost feels like our own secret thing. I shouldn't say secret, but since we can't shout with a megaphone at the top of a mountain and try and get new people in the door, that's like a disrespectful thing to do at the moment. But the people that are already inside those walls have really shown us a lot of appreciation for the album. So that feels really good. It's like, it's kind of like having a soft opening or something like that. You do it for friends and family first. We can really appreciate what we did. And then we'll tackle the bigger things when it's right.
And also, I think we all feel nothing but gratitude that we have whatever platform we have to be amplifiers for what's happening in the world. You know, whatever, if there are people listening to us right now, we are honored and thrilled to be channeling positive change, listening, reflecting ourselves, and like Scott was saying, it's not about the success of this album. This is about humanity right now, and we're thrilled that there might finally be some progress.
Share a little bit more about, how music can be so I had a friend of mine say recently about like music being a universal voice. And so how do you feel that music, maybe in particular yours, can provide that hope for people and a sense of community where there isn't any?
One of our friends just from Atlanta just posted that he was really down from all of the stuff that's going on in the world, and was on a bike ride, lives in Atlanta, was on a bike ride and was in tears. I don't know if it was a combination of a job-related concern plus the racial injustice. Whatever it was, he was really down and about the state of the world and where he fit into it. And he said he stopped on the Beltline in Atlanta, and there was like someone playing drums on a bucket on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And he sat next to him and played one of our songs and sang it. And the two of them played, it was I Can't Stop Thinking About You. They were playing it together, and he was just like weeping with tears of joy. I mean,
with this absolute stranger.
A total stranger. And it was, we haven't been, like, we obviously have been very proud. We're very proud of ourselves for releasing this out, for making this album and releasing it. Obviously, there have been a ton of mixed emotions in our world over the past week or two as we've released this album into a world that's hurting. And and we're citizens of the world first and foremost. We're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to be respectful. We see the bigger picture here. So we're trying to figure out how we're supposed to handle this. And then I saw that and shared it with these guys, and we all just got a little ray of sunshine, because that's why we do this thing. We do this to connect with people. We're proud of ourselves, as I said, because we made something that's honest to us. We do this to connect to people, and hopefully they can take our music and apply it to their lives. It's supposed to be universal. We've gotten a few stories like that over the past couple of weeks about people who just like really leaned on our music to get them through tough times. It's like the most rewarding thing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people right now are learning why they do what they do. Not that they didn't before, but it means tenfold, during a time where there's literally no other distractions. And it's a day-by-day thing for everybody.
100%.
So where can people find the album? Where can they follow you? Obviously, it's the Shadowboxers everywhere, correct?
Yep, and it's on all streaming platforms. And you can actually buy it on Bandcamp right now, and all the proceeds are being donated to
Campaign Zero.
Vibration Justice. So.
And real quick, who did the visuals? They look great. They're so sick.
The Real Theory, who we found on Instagram, which has just been a fantastic resource, both for just like researching sort of what we wanted visually for the record, but also for connection and further exploration. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, thanks guys for being on the Libby O Show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Libby.
You too. Have a great weekend.
It's the Libby Show. The Libby Show. It's the Libby Show. It's the Libby Show.